Hey there, Ride the Car Guy here, and today we're going to put a backup camera in the Mustang. Now I recently moved to yet another new place, and in this new place I'm doing a lot of parallel parking. Well, nothing highlights how bad rear visibility is than when you're trying to parallel park, and this thing has terrible rear visibility. So what I want to do is I want to put in a backup camera. It's going to make my life a lot easier when parallel parking and just parking in general, when I'm backing into spots, backing out of my garage, whatever the case may be. Now, of course, if you're going to install a camera, you need to have a screen to send the video feed to. Well, in my case, I have a head unit that has a screen that's ready to accept a camera input, so I'm all set up there. If you don't have a head unit installed that will accept video, I got a video for that. So if you want a little bit of help with that, go ahead and look down in the description below where I have a link to a video. If you don't want to take that route, let's say you want to keep the stock radio but still have a backup camera, well, there's a solution for that as well. I've also installed rear view mirrors that have screens built in, so that way you can maintain a stock radio but still have the functionality of a backup camera. I also, of course, recorded that process. That it was done on my Nissan Xterra, but at the end of the day, the process is the same. You mount the rear view mirror, give it power, give it a video input, and you are done. So head down to the description and look for a link to that video as well. So just about any camera you pick up online is going to work for this purpose as long as it's designed to be a backup camera. You just need to have your positive, your negative, and your video out from the camera. It's going to look like that classic sort of yellow RCA video out cable. If you do want the exact one I'm using in this video, of course you can check the description below, find a link there to where I purchased this one. But let's get started on the install. We're going to put this, of course, right over top of the license plate, find a way through the bumper, find a way into the trunk, and then get those cables all the way up to the radio. So go ahead and pop your trunk. We're going to find a spot to take the cables from behind the license plate into the trunk. Now, the inside of the trunk has this big plastic piece here. It's just basically a trim piece to make it look good. So to take this out, there's just a few simple body clips. Two on the top here, two on the front face, and then two sort of screw-esque pieces here that you want to unscrew to pull out this whole piece. So just pull those out and then we can really get a good look at what we have going on. Alright, so just take that off, just set it aside, we'll keep going. So if we look behind where the license plate is on the bumper, we can find a place where wires are going to come through from the outside to the inside. Now there's going to be grommets all over the vehicle, so it shouldn't be hard to find one. And if you look here, you can see just from tracing some wires to the outside of the car that there's a grommet right here that we can utilize. And I'll go ahead and show you a photo for some more detail, but it's about, I don't know, I'd say 1 inch in diameter. It's a pretty good size. So it's right about here on the inside of the trunk. So what we're going to do is we're just going to drill a nice, very small hole, just big enough to get the connector for the backup camera through the bumper, and then we're going to feed it in through this grommet, and boom, we already have the cable into the actual vehicle. So I grabbed my drill, and I got a bit that matches as closely as I can to basically the connector for the camera. So the camera's here, this is the connector we need to feed through into inside the vehicle. So I just found one that matches the best sort of diameter of that. So I'm just going to do a small hole right behind where the camera's going to sit and as high up into the crease of this recessed area for the license plate as I can, just so you don't see it, right? So it's very discreet, and that way once we install it, you're not going to have this sort of hole that you're going to be able to see just by walking by the car. Excellent, so right behind this here, I did a pretty decent sized hole, but now if I just grab this, see if I can feed it through. Yeah, I can feed it through just fine. So we're in good shape here. So I'm just gonna probably just mount this with 2 screws just to hold it in place, and then slide this cable all the way in, and that way our cable is completely behind the bumper and we know how much length we have to work with. So right away I can already tell you I'm pleased with where this hole is. The camera itself just about covers it up just at a glance. You kind of have to look for that hole to see it. So now that our cable is behind the bumper, let's go feed it through that hole with the grommet in it. So first things first, we're gonna pull this grommet out of the hole. So really you just have to squeeze the side of it. It should still be pretty supple. So just kind of squeeze it. Try not to pull on the cables themselves, right? We don't want to put a bunch of tension on that. But pulling on the grommet, there we go. And then now that that's out, you can just sort of slide that down a little bit, slide it down the cable. And now you should have a pretty decent sized hole to work with. As you can see, we have our cable down here. It's just hanging loose below the car. So what we want to do is find a way to get it fed up through this. Now, off camera, I already tried to stick my hand up there. There's kind of too many turns or too tight of turns to get my hands up there. So if you have like maybe a dowel rod or even like some thick string or cable you can kind of stuff down there, let it drop, and then just tie this together and pull it through, that's probably going to work the best. I actually have those bendy type rods that are made to feed wires through houses. So I'll probably just use that to get this fed through. So I just have one piece of that here, and I'm just going to feed that through, kind of push it down. And that should make it to the bottom of the vehicle. Sounds like it's hitting the bumper. Let's take a look. Yeah, here we go. Excellent. So we have this bar sitting out here below the car, and then in here in the trunk through that grommet hole. So I'm just going to take this cable, flip it around here, and I'm just going to tape it. It's very temporary. Tape it to the pole and then pull it through. So I just taped it with some painter's tape so it doesn't get a bunch of adhesive all over it. And now we just have to pull this through. There we go. Simple as that. So, unravel the tape. And there you are. Now your cable is coming from the camera behind the license plate into your trunk. Lastly, for, of course, weather protection, noise, water, all of that getting into the trunk, we want to puncture our seal here just enough to squeeze the head of this through and kind of get as tight of a seal around this as we can. So just be careful when doing this. I'm going to grab just a blade, kind of flip my grommet back, and just give it a little slice to push this through. All right, looks like right here will do. I'm just going to gently push a blade through. There we go. Made a tiny little incision. You can probably barely see that on there. But I'm going to push this through. There we go. And so I just made a little incision, pushed the head of the connector through, and then I just got to keep going. There we go. Awesome. And that's it. So, you see here, it's as tight as it can be around this cable, and it's going to not let any considerable amount of water in, especially based on its location. So now we just need to push this grommet back in place and make sure that it's in there nice and tight to create that seal. When you're all done, you should see both cables coming through the grommet. And then this one, we're going to probably just follow this trace here and then wire up the rest to the tail light on the passenger side. So now we need to deal with the next cable that came with our camera, and that is the one that has the connector that connects from the camera connection, of course, connects to the camera, and then this is a video out, and then this is what's going to supply our positive and negative power. So what's nice is most modern head units will have what's called a video interrupt. And what that means is that as soon as it receives a signal from this cable behind the radio, it will display whatever the video is displaying. So what that means is that we don't want this camera to be on all the time. We only want to supply positive power to the camera when we're in reverse. So the perfect thing to do that with is our reverse lights, because obviously those are only on when we're backing up. So I did some quick cable management. I just sort of tied my cable to anything that was in the same direction. Obviously this came out of a grommet with a harness already in it, so I just followed that along, and now we're here. And this is again the passenger side, so the right side light, and we're going to look for the positive power cable for the backup light. If you have the same model Mustang and you're using the same side, that is going to be the white and yellow cable. So you can see it here in the top. That's actually a white and yellow, and then it feeds to the cable below it, of course. It's just a connector, and that feeds to this cable here. So we're actually going to get sort of like a line tap where it does not completely sever the cable, but it does get to the power, and then we can feed off of it and tap this out. So the beauty of that is that you're not actually severing any of the original cables. I like to be able to bring everything back to stock if I can, so that's the preferred method for me. Operating these are quite easy. You have two little channels here. One stops halfway through, the other one passes all the way through. So effectively what you do is you slide the cable into that one channel, and then you slide your power cable in to the other channel, and then you just squeeze it tight. So it will not, of course, cut it fully. It just sort of kind of squeezes down both sides and gets to the actual metal, and then it does it on both cables, therefore giving you the power of this cable without severing it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to connect this, so that way I know how much space I have to work with. So let's just plug this in. There we go, nice click there. And then just kind of set this down here until it gets to this point. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to pull these apart because I'm going to send them in opposite directions. There we go. And now I'm going to trim off any of this excess because I don't need a ton of cabling here. So I should be good with about this here. Excellent, so pull that out, kind of throw that to the side or throw it away. Then we can get this ready. So I'm going to run it just like this. I'm going to put this in here, and then I'm going to run this through that other channel. Once you have everything in place, just grab like a regular wire crimper and push this down. There we go. Excellent. So just give these a light tug, make sure they're all pressed in, and then it just has this little clip here to hold everything in place, and voila. So now we have this cable here, we've spliced into the positive power, and now the positive power of our camera is connected. Now dealing with our negative battery cable is going to be even easier. We have a body ground sitting right here. So again, just kind of follow the cable back. Give yourself enough room to work. So I'm just going to do about another inch or two past what I need. Cut that off. Throw the slop away. So now all I'm going to do is strip this cable, of course, and I'm just going to wrap it around the back of this bolt. Honestly, that'll work for you. I ran out of these pieces here, the little circular connectors. So I'm just going to back this out a little bit, put this in there, and cinch it back down. So I'm just going to do a little bit of cable management down here, just kind of cinch things back together. And then all we have to do after this is take our video cable and bring it up to the head unit. One quick thing I do want to mention though, on some of these backup cameras you're going to see this little cable, it's just looped back in the connector. Generally this is going to be for those guidelines on the camera itself, so when you see the video they have that like, sometimes they're yellow, sometimes they're green, yellow, and red. By default they're turned on. If you want them turned off, you can cut this and they will no longer show up. This might be a bit of a pain to reconnect, so make your decision now and you're gonna kind of have to live with it. Alright, now for our last cable here. So our last cable is just our video cable. It needs to run up to the head unit. So on this one you're gonna find just the male-to-male video cable, and in some cases you might see this cable as well. This is actually pretty clever. This is if you want to use the remote turn on from the head unit, so it effectively extends your power cable from the front of the car all the way to the back. But we decided to use the power from the tail light, or the reverse light if you will, so we don't need this. So all we're going to do here is plug this in, and I'm likely going to come back with electrical tape as well and just kind of protect this so that way if any moisture does get in here, it gives it a better fighting chance here, if you will. And now we're just gonna take this one and we're gonna feed it up through the, well, into the cabin through the seat. So we're gonna fold the seat down and start pulling it through. And now all we need to do is just hide this cable and get it up to the front of the car. Now this next part is gonna go pretty fast. We just wanna fold our rear seat down on the side that we're running the cable. And the beauty of most cars is that things have a little bit of space in between them. So we're gonna be able to just kind of squeeze and pull things away from each other, so like the seat away from this trim panel, and run the cable down and very quickly and easily hide our cable as we move towards the front of the vehicle. So, fold this down, and here is our cable. So I'm just gonna pull this most of the way taut, and you don't wanna pull everything as tight as you possibly can. Obviously you wanna put a little bit of wiggle room all the way down the line. So, if you see here, here's my cable, and we have a loom right here. We can try to follow this loom if we want. By doing that, we can just take the other end here. And it's gonna be a lot of feeding cables through if you wanna have it behind like a bracket, for instance. And let me show you what I mean. So I'm gonna untangle this. So if we wanna be beneath here, you kinda just have to run it, push it down. So we're pushing it down behind the back of the seat. And then try not to get this very tangled. And then if we come back here and flip it down, there we go. You just pull this, find the cable right there. And then effectively come back in, throw that back there, and start feeding it through. All right, so we're underneath that one piece. So now if we just flip this forward, drop it back, great, now it's behind that. And then we can continue this moving forward. There we go. Just kind of tuck it in as far as you can. Yeah, that looks good. And then just keep moving forward. Now for some of these, you're gonna wanna pull some clips out. So this just had a little clip in here that was holding this, this panel in place. So I just popped that out. And then what I'm looking to do is start running down here, and then I'm gonna run against the sort of the kick panel here. So I wanna grab my seat, just kind of gently guide the wire around it, and then just pull this away. There we go. Pull that. Yeah, there we go. Underneath here. Awesome. So now I have it fed under this panel, and now we're ready to get to under our little kick plate. So for this, this should just be basically pressed down in place with clips. So I just have a plastic body remover. If you don't have this, if you maybe have a plastic chisel, or you might be able to just brute force it, actually, now that I think about it. Yeah, that works too. So you can just pull it off, or if you have one of these panel removers, you can kind of work your way around here as well. So it looks like it had some adhesive here. So if you don't want to pull this off and have to worry about replacing this, you can just leave it in place if you'd like, and just kind of gently pull up like this, and just push your cable underneath as you go. That works just as well, I'm sure. But since I have this off, I'm gonna set that aside, grab my cable, and just run it underneath here. And it looks like my carpet wasn't connected up here either, so that's kind of nice that I pulled this off. But I'm gonna pull the carpet back. There we go, and run it all the way underneath the carpet. There we go. Excellent. Once you have it ran, just put the carpet back in place. There we go. I'm just gonna snap this back in place for now. Now for this quarter panel up here, I'm going to do the opposite of what I did with the kick plate. I'm just going to push it in here so you can kind of see that method and how easy it is. But the goal here, of course, is to get this routed around the footwell and then back into the center console for the radio. Now that we're to this point, we can just follow any other harness. So for instance, this harness goes all the way into the back of the radio. So that way we can use zip ties to manage the cables back here. Now as you can see, I'm gonna have a lot of slack. So what I'm gonna do is just grab my cable, make sure it's not tangled anywhere. And then what we'll do is we'll just plug it into the radio, and then we'll just deal with hiding basically a bundle of wire somewhere else. One of the more frustrating designs of this model is that to get to the radio, you need to actually take this whole top center console piece out. And to do that, you have to remove the 2 screws in the back there at the top. Basically, you just got to take those out, and then you're able to snap that whole top piece off. Now that that's loose, we can just pull it away. We don't necessarily need to pull this whole thing out unless you want to, but we can just sort of tuck it back far enough to pull these side panels off. There we go. Set that aside. This one as well. Very good. And then from here, it's going to be 6, what are these? 7mm bolts. All right, so with all that loose, you can lift that away here. We just have a little bit of tension at the top. So effectively, you almost want to fold it a little bit. There you go, and pull it out. Now the way I'm doing this is I'm just giving myself enough space to kind of tilt the radio and pull it out. If you want to take the full assembly out, the install video that I do on this that I mentioned earlier will have all of the steps required. But I'm just going to give myself enough space to pull all these out and just kind of tilt my radio because it's a really shallow radio, and then pull it out. All right, so on the bright side, mine had some little extenders here. Let me see if I can grab them. There we go. So I found my little connector here by sliding my radio out. It says camera right here. So if I grab my camera input right here, make sure you're feeding it in through an appropriate place, if you will. There we go. There. Bring it back here. Excellent. And plug it in. Awesome. So now that that's plugged in, you can kind of tuck that back there. There we go. And now I can just tentatively, because I want to test this, but tentatively install the radio back in. So all we need to do now is to turn it on, put it in reverse, see if the camera turns on. If it doesn't, we can manually turn it on and just see if the feed itself is working. So flip it on. Now hopefully if this radio has an interrupt, if you just put it in reverse, it'll automatically turn the camera on. So let's see. Nope. So I'll have to look at the settings, but if, it has a camera button, so you can click on it manually to see if it's working, and sure enough it is. So that's pretty nice. If we take it out of reverse, the camera should turn off. That means we basically want to make sure we're cutting power to the camera so it's not on all the time. Yep, and sure enough, when we take it out of reverse, the camera then turns off because you're taking the power away. Back on, and there you are. So that's it for this. I'm just gonna button the rest of this up and just find a place to basically bunch up my wire and just kind of stuff it down in that passenger footwell. So that's it for this video. To clean everything up, just basically reverse the steps we took to take it apart. That includes the dash, anything you took out in the footwell, and the trunk. If you did like this video, please go ahead and hit that like button, subscribe for more content like this, and if you want to support the channel, go ahead and head to rtcg.tv, click that merch button, and buy yourself a t-shirt. Thanks again so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one.